Okay, I'd like to introduce the folks from Rocky Linux, Neil Hanlon, Lexi, and who else is from Rocky? There's one, Taylor,
Taylor is.
Taylor Goodwill. So if you want to kick it off, Neil,
Sure.
we can go.
Thank you very much. So I know I just said that I don't have any slides before we started recording, but I do have like 2 slides I'm going to use just for ease of presentation and sharing information. So Rocky Linux is a community-driven enterprise Linux distribution. We are, like our direct upstream Red Hat enterprise Linux, our community cares a lot about stability, not just of the software, but of the organization, and knowing that they can count on the organization and people behind Rocky Linux for 10, 15, 30 years down the line. Rocky was created after the CentOS project shifted their focus towards CentOS Stream and away from CentOS Linux, which CentOS Linux version 7 is the final version of CentOS Linux as it exists. And so they shifted their focus towards CentOS Stream, which is a little bit different, and it's upstream of Red Hat. But Rocky, as was founded to basically replace the CentOS Linux ecosystem in a way of individuals who were looking for the specific things of a 100% compatible enterprise Linux operating system that doesn't have any licensing or hoops to jump through to get access to for whatever use. Testing. I use CentOS going through college and stuff for learning Linux. Really, that was my first exposure into like the professional world of Linux was through CentOS and into Red Hat Enterprise Linux from there. So yeah. So stability is of course important, but Rocky Linux doesn't just exist by itself. Rocky is part of the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation. The RESF is the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation. Myself and a number of our other co-founders and team leads like Taylor, we spent a considerable amount of time building the RESF from the ground up with policies and bylaws and a charter to ensure that it stays for and by the community. So our vision, stated here, it's to create and nurture a community of individuals and organizations that are committed to ensuring the longevity, stewardship, and innovation of enterprise-class open-source software. I'm pretty proud of this, especially with how long we spent on it and with the organization we created. It's specifically different in a few different ways, but the biggest one is that the only way to vote for the board and projects basically direction in the Rocky Linux and the RESF is by being a member. There's no ability to buy seats and have different levels of sponsorship that get implicit rights to govern or ask for things to happen. We're fully by our membership, and kind of meritocracy is not really what we're going for per se, but the individuals who make up our community are the folks who we want to be making the decisions for our community, for who they want to be in charge. So yeah, the RESF is the Rocky Linux project rather is largely grouped into these kind of 2 buckets. There's technical steering and our outreach kind of sides. On the technical side of things, we have our infrastructure and release engineering, as well as our security and testing teams. On the outreach side, we've got community/operations. That's folks like Lexi and our other community manager, Krista. It's also folks like Brian, who was going to be here tonight, but he's on vacation right now with some family. And they help keep everything running and moving and handle the business side, basically, of the project and organization. And right now there's a lot of overlap between RESF and Rocky Linux responsibilities, just because Rocky is the biggest and primary project inside RESF. SIGs, these slides are for a special interest group showcase, but our special interest groups are really what make Rocky diverse or different from Red Hat, because at its core, the product that Rocky Linux creates, the ISOs you can download for a website and all those other things, they're primarily and our stated goal is to be 100% compatible with upstream enterprise Linux. So that's basically bug for bug compatible with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, insofar as we want to use that term. The place we can innovate and add on to that is really in our special interest groups. We can deliver a customized experience that extends enterprise Linux. And so a number of our special interest groups do different things. And, I'll get into that in a little bit. But this is primarily kind of where I wanted to leave it from the what is Rocky and the RASF side of things. I don't think I have any other slides in here that are going to be incredibly useful. One distinction here, I guess, is between teams and special interest groups. Teams are the infrastructure, release engineering, security, testing. They're the things that create the core of Rocky Linux. They're focused on the core goal of Rocky as an enterprise Linux compatible distribution. Special interest groups and our SIGs allow us to extend that experience and ideally to help funnel contributors not just into Rocky and the RASF, but into upstream communities like CentOS and Fedora, and even upstream further from there. So our SIGs allow focused and transparent development on an area that our community wants to solve a particular problem for, and to help them become members of the RASF and to become really big parts of our community. It is where we want to follow our contributors towards. So stop sharing that for now. Some brief updates from the last month. Rocky 8.10 and 9.4 were released, which are upstream of or downstream from Red Hat releases. 8.10 is going to be supported for the next 5 years until 2029. And the 8.10 will be kind of the last minor release that we're getting for this. There's not going to be an 8.11. It's just the 8.10 for the next 5 years will receive security level updates. So because of the lack of minor updates, there's not going to be another port release for 8, we're going to be starting to issue more frequent images for 8.10 with the updated packages and everything else that go along with that into clouds and onto our mirrors, so that users can have an updated source that doesn't have to jump around a whole lot for getting updates from a source or anything else. We can just deliver an updated image, especially if there's any sort of security vulnerabilities. This is actually something we've been asked by Microsoft for as well in the shim community for Secure Boot, is kind of working towards having more frequent images so that there can be a quicker and faster response towards vulnerabilities in the shim and Secure Boot area of Linux. 9.4, kind of a standard release. There wasn't really anything special in it per se. Rocky 9 will continue receiving point updates for the next few years until 9.10 hits, and then the same thing, 5 years of support, which brings that out to 2032. Another recent update is we're doing Secure Boot for ARM64. I think the only distributions right now that are doing that are Ubuntu and Oracle Linux, I think, has this as well. So if you have an ARM64, ARC64 machine, and you want to try out Secure Boot with Rocky Linux, we would definitely like to hear your experience with that process, and if you run into any hurdles or anything like that. So next, I want to do a couple of community updates. This year we were at FOSDEM back in February, as well as CentOS Connect. That was over in Belgium in Europe. And we had a great time there, gave it a bunch of swag, followed that up with a number of conferences in April and up in May, as well as June at Linux Fest Northwest, Texas Linux Fest, Southeast Linux Fest, lots of Linux Fests. It's a common theme. And we're also going to be at a number of other conferences this summer, including DevConf US, which is in Boston, beginning-ish second, I think, week, maybe first or second week of August in Boston. The other thing that I'm trying to do is, one of my friends is an organizer at Boston Python. I'm not sure if anyone is, has some overlap with those groups as well, but we're looking at potentially doing some sort of Rocky kind of pizza party, small, little discussion group gathering with Boston Python around the time of DevConf US. And if more comes of that, which I hope it will, I will certainly keep this group informed with anything else that's going on with that. Over on the testing team, they're working on growing the team and increasing the scope of what the testing is doing, including collaborating with the CentOS integration special interest group. That's CentOS project SIG that is focusing on basically enabling all of the different distributions of enterprise Linux, like Alma and Rocky and Oracle and SUSE and all of the types of things that want to do. We're all trying to solve, if not the same, then very, very similar goals. So this is going to hopefully be a place where all of the ELs can contribute tests, not only for graphical stuff like in OpenQA, but also in a test management tool, which is something that Fedora uses for compose testing and ensuring that packages don't have regressions, that they update properly, they install okay, all that sort of stuff. So it should hopefully, when we get there, be a big boon for the whole ecosystem. In fact, Meta and Facebook is doing some work right now on OpenQA. I think it's going to be announced in the next week or so to enable launching testers on clouds directly. Right now, OpenQA's architecture has it so that you have to run workers that are on specific architectures, and they launch QEMU nodes to run tests and this sort of stuff. So Meta is doing some work and development on OpenQA to enable it to launch these directly into cloud providers like AWS, so that the test can be done directly on that system without having the nested virtualization problem that often gets run into there. Stop for a brief moment if anyone has any questions and wants to go over any of the recent updates from our teams. And otherwise, I have some information about our special interest groups that I can talk about.
Yeah, I did have one question. I guess like I've definitely followed Rocky. I guess I remember I think we had the first BLU meeting about Rocky back in, was it 2021 or 2020?
I think so.
Yeah. But I mean, the whole genesis of Rocky was because the CentOS decided to do this whole stream thing, and then IBM kind of went a step further and tried to cut off access to the downstream code. And I know you guys came up with a workaround, but do you guys considered all that the IBM may try another, well, I mean, I can see that they're kind of incentivized as a business to want to generate as much revenue from Mel as possible. But like, if they do any, further activity to kind of cut off the downstream code, does Rocky have, some way to mitigate that?
Sure. Yeah. So essentially, in response to the events of last year, the great unpleasantness or whatever, effectively the end result was that the sources for CentOS 8 or for RHEL 8 and 9 debranded as CentOS basically were no longer being sent and distributed to git.centos.org, which had been the canonical source for essentially extracted source RPMs that were had some debranding applied to them by the CentOS team, such that it worked. In a lot of ways, I think that the change to git.centos.org to no longer have those sources and to focus on the GitLab sources that are now where CentOS Stream is developed, it sort of was inevitable in some ways. In fact, it was something that was discussed early on in Rocky as we were developing how are we going to move forward? What are we going to do with Rocky at the very beginning of the project? And that's why we took a lot of time at the beginning to develop processes and methods that would enable us to perform the debranding work on whatever sources, whether they were coming from a git.centos.org, or they were coming from another Git forge, or if they were coming from literal SRPMs that we were extracting and pulling in from in that manner. And so essentially that's where we pivoted towards, is just instead of having this kind of pre-step where the packages were being debranded from Red Hat into CentOS, where really it was just changing some labels on some things and trademarks and copyrights. We were doing basically, if not exactly, the same work to debrand the CentOS sources on kit.centos as they were for debranding them directly from Red Hat. So in a lot of ways, that didn't change. The future kind of what might happen if IBM or CentOS, or Red Hat rather, were to make further changes to restrict things. I can't really speculate on that per se. I think that Rocky as an organization is prepared to continue to rebuild faithfully an enterprise 100% compatible enterprise Linux distribution for as long as we are able to. That's our goal as envisioned as we set out, and we don't. Our community, moreover, like it's not just me and Taylor and Lexi and whoever else is, all our other team leads that want it, but our community feels very strongly that having this 100% compatible with RHEL is valuable, and so we are going to try and do it for as long as we can. Some of the things that are involved with that are tangential even to Rocky, and Rocky isn't 100% involved in like OpenELA. Full disclosure, I work for CIQ. CIQ is one of Rocky's founding sponsors. They are a principal sponsor and partner of Rocky, and they pay me to work on Rocky and talk to you folks and do stuff like this. But Rocky doesn't, or CIQ doesn't have any more say than anyone else would in the project. And that's goes back to our charter and bylaws and all that sort of thing. But OpenELA as an organization is largely doing exactly what Rocky is doing. Also, I'm on the technical steering committee for OpenELA, but Rocky has no plans right now to be using it because the Rocky team's procedures and policies that were set up at the very beginning are still working great. And they have no real reason to change at this point because there's no real threat that we can perceive. And going back to that, I think that moreover, I see that Red Hat is doing more to enable collaboration with downstream enterprise distributions and downstream distributions as a whole than they are to block it. CentOS Stream 10 was officially kind of released as alpha, beta, whatever, a couple weeks ago or last week, but Rocky has had a nominally working version of Rocky 10 due to the sources for Stream 10 being publicly available so soon. So a lot of the work that is being done for as bad as I think everyone, including myself, thought that the changes to CentOS Stream were, at the beginning rather, the overall change to having a distribution that is ahead of RHEL and that can be used to help develop on RHEL is actually really great for enabling communities like Rocky to add to and enhance the enterprise Linux experience. So as far as the future for where we're getting sources, it doesn't particularly matter whether we're getting them from Red Hat directly, if we're getting it from OpenELA, if we were getting from git.centos.org, or if we had a public FTP site that people sent us SRPMs on, or whatever the case were. Rocky is committed to continue kind of until the bitter end, and we hope that it's not bitter, and that's why we are also working a whole lot on upstream collaboration, funneling a lot of our special interest group work into these special interest groups, and working with folks like Carlos and I can't remember their real name, but Book War and the CentOS project for the integration's sake, and helping to enable more testing and collaboration in the enterprise Linux space. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Alrighty. I did mention Rocky Linux 10. That's something that we're currently working on in the Rocky RHEL engine and infrastructure team. We've got a huge amount of packages already built up for Rocky 10. And one of the really neat things that we're going to hope to do for Rocky 10 is have RISC-V support out of the box. Specifically, right now we're targeting the Vision 5.2 from Sci5, which is kind of a small, well, I actually have one right here. Full SBC, Raspberry Pi form factor. It's in a case right now. There's my camera. But just a little board here. We've got 15 of these from risc5.org. They were purchased for the Rocky Linux project, and we will be hosting these, myself and a couple of other RHEL folks will be hosting these for our alternative architecture special interest group. That is primarily focusing on the RISC-V bootstrap effort, both with Rocky and Fedora. If you have a RISC-V board, like Vision 5 in particular, Fedora 40 currently right now can work on that. There's a little bit of a process you need to go to, but if you're interested in that, send me a message and I can get you some links and get you with the people that are informed. Besides RISC-V, the things that more people probably have access to and care about, we've got a lot of support coming for various single-board computers. The Libre computing boards, there's 4 of them, the Lepetato, Lafrite, and there's two other of those boards that we're going to be supporting, the Orange Pi 5, the Banana Pi 5, basically every Raspberry Pi that's not ARM 32-bit, and a number of the Pine 64 boards like the Rockford 64. So we have them all working. We just need to figure out the build system issues in the special interest group to get them built and have images created for them. But I've been running Rocky on these Libre boards at my house for a while now, and they're working great. So if you're interested in any of these boards or any other boards potentially, we definitely invite you to join this special interest group. All our SIGs meet regularly. There's a link on the website if you go to rockylinux.org. I think it's under community. You can find a link to the Rocky Linux public calendar. It's currently on Google Calendar, but you can click there, see where all the meetings are, join them. They're on Google Meet. Anyone's welcome. The testing team, our team meetings are on there as well, so the testing team meets tomorrow. Kernel SIG and HPC SIG meet next Thursday, etc. So definitely check out the calendar there if you're interested in joining one of the special interest groups that I might talk about. Another kind of neat thing with the Alt-Art special interest group, if you want another reason to join, is that we have a budget that we got approved by the RESF board last year for giving away an SBC of your choice to you if you will just come and help us test it during the next release of Rocky. That's literally the only requirement. We have plenty of money in that budget right now to give away boards to people. So if you're interested, if you want a specific board like a Raspberry Pi or something more esoteric usually, but really anything you want, we're happy to buy one, ship it to you, and just ask that you come join us during release times and help make sure it works on the next versions of Rocky. Another one of our special interest groups that I just mentioned is our high performance computing special interest group. They provide packages for HPC clusters running Rocky, basically. So they build Werewolf, Slurm, Obtainer. Sharif, who is the lead there, is working right now, I believe, on Luster for a file system. And there's a whole number of packages there that we'd like to bring into and support with Rocky. Collaborating with the OpenHPC folks to build some of these packages and take the load off of OpenHPC as a organization, so they can focus on the management tooling and less on the building the latest version of whatever package. So that's a great place, I think. And there's a lot of integration there and overlap with our testing teams. That one of the goals for the HPC SIG is to do kind of end-to-end testing of clusters so that we can perform regression and other sorts of specific testing that you don't really have the ability to do any normal testing environment, especially around hardware support. So HPC SIG has also worked with Intel recently on ARC drivers. We have a K-mod right now in the kernel special interest group for Intel ARC drivers. We want to do the same for NVIDIA and hopefully talk to them about changing up some of the packaging that they're doing in their kernel or their K-mods, which make them impossible to install on enterprise Linux. And there's another number of other drivers there that need some specific testing in hardware. And I'm working as the infrastructure lead to help enable that testing in various environments as well. So moving on from there, kind of just rapid fire, we're working on spinning up a desktop/gaming SIG. A number of our folks are interested in a Rocky desktop experience for a number of reasons, stability being kind of the biggest one. But also we found out that there's pretty good support for playing video games on Rocky as well, both new stuff and old stuff and whatever else. So there's a whole gambit, I think, of opportunities there for packages and community collaboration and a whole number of different things to help grow our community, and we'd love for you to get involved in that as well. Then we got a security. Solar Designer from openwall.org is one of the leads for our security SIG. He's brought in the Linux kernel runtime guard, which OpenWall creates. It's a K-mod that protects the kernel, basically. There's a page that you can go read up on it, but it's pretty neat, and it's great to have that available in Rocky as something that you can just kind of install with very little effort. You just have to enable a SIG repo. Besides that, there's a number of override and new packages, like we have overrides for glibc and OpenSSH, which shut down some linkages and fix various CVEs that aren't fixed upstream. Also have hardened malloc, which is a new package. It's hardened memory allocator, and password quality check, which is a PAM module to help enforce certain password quality restrictions like length and entropy and that sort of stuff. Another big update is from our core/infra SIG, which is essentially just rel engine and infra here. For Rocky 9, we've started building all our images with Kiwi. Kiwi is an image builder tool from OpenSUSE, and it's been working really, really great, giving us the opportunity to move a lot faster with building these images, and we're going to be bringing it over to 8.10 for future images to help solve some of the issues that I was discussing earlier with there not being more point releases, so wanting to roll images to users more frequently and as fast as we can, basically, with the updates. Future, we got a lot of interest in visual effects on Rocky. There's a number of VFX studios in Hollywood and elsewhere that are running Rocky on their render farms, and there's a whole group of people that are very interested in having a group specifically around that. But the current thing we're missing, more or less, is some leadership to come forward out of that. There's a lot of users that are interested in it, but no one yet has come forward to kind of lead that and take it over. So if that's you, or if you know someone that might be, please get in touch. Other thing that's kind of been noodling on our minds recently has been around ham radio. I just became a ham a couple of weeks ago down at Southeast Linux Fest, where they do a exam, and so we've got a number of folks on our team who like amateur radio and want to do more stuff with amateur radio on Rocky and Enterprise Linux as well.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. And then lastly, the only thing I kind of had was a small update on our build system, which is Peridot. This is something that Rocky created and uses to build Rocky 9, and we're using it to build Rocky 10. All of the special interest groups also use Peridot for building and releasing packages, but version 2 for one of the components of the build system called YumRepoFS is on the way. YumRepoFS handles all of the pre-composition of artifacts that go into the Rocky repositories. Kind of one of the things that makes us distinct from other distributions are that in most of the build systems for distributions, the packages are lumped into one giant repository, and then you run a big solver for statusability on all of those packages to split them into the repositories that they need to go into. On YumRepo.fs, we've preloaded all of that work so that the repositories come out after each build as we want them to, and we don't have to do any solving after the fact. This is great, but it also leads into some problems. Specifically, we've had with scaling. So we've re-architected YumRepo.fs to be a lot faster and much more deterministic, which is kind of one of the issues that we currently have had to fight with the build system of the past few years, is a bit of non-determinism and having to wrangle it to get it to do what it is supposed to do. But it's been a great adventure in software engineering. And there's a lot of stuff too on Peridot. The developer experience is the biggest thing that we need to fix. We want Peridot to be something that can be used by anyone to extend their own Rocky Linux experience. So we want it to be simple to run and use and have it be able to respond to a change upstream. So the example I always give is, what if you maintain an image for your company and you have your packages you want to install, or you need to load your SSH keys or do whatever you need to do to customize it for your needs. Our goal with Peridot for its entire life is, or at the end, right, is to have a system where your version of your instance of Peridot can react to the fact that Rocky released a new version and go and customize your image, upload it to your clouds, and integrate with the rest of your software lifecycle. So the first part of that is making it so that other people can deploy it and use it, and that's what I'll be working on this summer, along with getting YumRepo.fs v2 working. Yeah, that's all I pretty much had for everyone. I'm happy to take other more questions and etc.
Thanks, Neil.
Of course.
So, who's the next speaker? So who do we have next?
Got either Lexi or Taylor.
Hey, folks. I didn't come with anything special prepared. I was just kind of hanging out if any questions came up during Neil's chat and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
I didn't know if you were back, Lexi.
I'm here. It was beautiful.
I'm not seeing any questions.
Is it okay to ask questions?
It's okay with me.
Yeah. Okay. So I just kind of had a couple questions around like down the road. With Rocky, and as you said, you're kind of working as sort of being a quasi upstream for Realm around package versioning of like kernels and stuff, which is always in the enterprise space. Everybody is always backported, many years worth of stuff onto an original kernel dot release. And I don't want to dig way under the weeds where it might be a special interest group. But are you aware if going forward, are they going to stay more aligned versioning wise with the upstream kernel versions, or will they continue on with we're going to base Rocky 10 or Rocky 11 or whatever, off a x.x version of kernel and then backport everything to it.
So RHEL is definitely going to continue doing their Red Hat kernel, where they branch off of now Fedora through ELN into CentOS Stream, and we have that. I think it's a 6.8 or 6.9 kernel, which will be coming for Rocky 10 stuff. From Rocky, the core distribution, what you'll get when you go and download Rocky from rockylinux.org, that's going to be for the foreseeable future, as long as we can continue to do it, exactly what Red Hat brings. But that being said, our special interest groups, as you kind of are alluding to, are exactly where we can enable different things like upstream kernels. And we do have a kernel special interest group as well, which I think I glanced over for some reason. But
yeah, you did. Yeah, you mentioned it, and I'm not going to put you on the spot or anything. I just kind of want you to overview if you kind of had an idea of, because I work in an enterprise, and I understand 100% why everything has been backported. It makes things like it's generally third-party products like Oracle database, right? The things that enterprises use, they can very easily look for a ... in the kernel version. But for other folks that are looking for, because not everybody's a database machine, right? You might be running a web server, you might be running a container or a container host. That it makes being modern and using some of the more modern features a lot more difficult, because then you either have to kind of backport your own stuff onto the things that are already backported, or you've got to work with getting your own modified kernel or your own whatever kernel assigned with a key that's bootable, kind of in your secure environment. And to me, as in my position, that's kind of like, it's very interesting to see where enterprise proper is, enterprise Linux proper is kind of going with that.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely interesting. I know my employers, the IQ, and some of the folks I work with have done a bunch of research lately on the upstream kernels, and there's been a whole bunch of news, as I'm sure everyone has seen recently, about the Linux kernel CNA and the number of CVs that are being published by the CV or the kernel team on a daily basis, really, at this point. So
yeah, pretty much.
I think a lot of stuff's going to have to change realistically.
Yeah.
Okay. For the kernel SIG,
I'm kind of in
Rocky.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the kernel SIG in Rocky is what they're working on right now. I think is the mainline kernel, so one version of the mainline, whatever, is stable and or marked as stable, and then two of the LTS, or maybe two or three of the LTS branches. There's been some tooling developed called Kernel Packer. It's part of our V2 kind of mission that essentially just grabs upstream kernels from kernel.org, so the kernels from there, and packs them into spec files using the RHEL kernel configs from the rawhide branch of Fedora, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. All right.
So we can do there, and we have some. There's some tooling in there that enables the Altarch SIG needs to have some other flags turned on that RHEL doesn't enable for SBCs and stuff. So we have some ability now to optionally just turn those on for variants that we produce for the ARM kernel or whatever it is that we're doing for a SIG. And we want to enable that for more SIGs and also funnel that through into our secure boot area to have the ability for things to produce secure boot artifacts that can be installed and booted directly without having to muck with like mock or anything like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bit of ways from that, but hopefully we can get that policy figured out that will enable us to feel comfortable in letting people sign artifacts that we release and test to the security of. So it'll be an interesting thing. Discussion involved.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it, Kevin.
And Neil Cow posted a question on the chat.
I'll read it back. So the question is, in terms of SE Linux support, RHEL and derived distros generally have fairly good SE Linux support. How does Rocky manage extracting RHEL's policy? Do they fork off upstream SE Linux ref policy to their own? How does Rocky integrate into secure environments where a tighter SE Linux possibly? Tighter SE Linux possibly. Okay. Important we have a SE Linux policy. So there's a couple of things there. RHEL has recently made the SE Linux policy config for 9 or 10, possibly both, public on their GitLab, so that it's not something that has to be extracted out of the compiled stuff on disk and reverse engineered essentially. So that was a request that came out of the CentOS hyperscale SIG, and they responded and were like, yeah, no, that makes sense. That there's possibly other reasons for that. I'm not really sure, but there is in general more stuff being open there. And for Rocky, what we are producing is we're taking the policy SRPMs that RHEL is releasing and rebuilding them in our build root, basically. So we're an exact copy of that, and we're not doing really any of the reverse engineering work because we are using the upstream SRPMs from CentOS Stream and RHEL where applicable. Of course. It's a question from Brandon. Any idea if there will ever be an installation option for Rocky security policy that will come out pre-stigged or at least better stigged? Or is there already an Ansible script like this with RHEL? So there's a number of things there. I think you can do it possibly in the installer using the OpenSCAP, the Open Compliance as Code, or Open Source Compliance as Code framework. The other thing that the OpenSCAP framework does is if you're on a system that is already installed, you can run a remediation, which would be either an Ansible or Bash script, essentially. But Ansible Playbook is one of the options, and it should work nominally just the same as it does with RHEL. I think there are some vague differences in how Rocky is treated because the way Rocky is implemented into the security policy, the SCAP security guide code base is we mark ourselves as a derivative of RHEL, but we've found, and I think testing, some people have reported that not every test essentially in the rule book is written for that it being applicable to a downstream distribution. So even though we say we're a derivative of RHEL, there are some things in the STIG that are specified only for RHEL and not derivatives. So there may be some work that needs to go on there. But one of the guys who one of our testing team leads, security team leads, Scott Shin, is actually the guy who wrote DISA STIG. And so we will, if there's any problems there, I know he would love to work on it. And if you want to get in contact about that, I'm happy to funnel that request too. Awesome. Yeah, please let us know how it works. There's also doesn't really exist much like many government things, but there was a SIG US Gov channel that got created very early in Rocky's history, and there was some activity recently in it, so that might be a good place. But otherwise, there's a security channel on Mattermost, forums, Twitter, Carrier Pigeon. Just don't show up at my house, please.
So another kind of general kind of question. Have you seen the popularity of Rocky going up in the last year, or the time frame since there was questionable things going on with the history or continuation of CentOS and stuff? Have you seen a large migration to Rocky from CentOS users, or especially like in things like what is it, like the appliance spaces and things that always historically shipped with CentOS?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a mix, and that's one of the good things, in my opinion, about like the changes that were made and the fact that multiple options in the placement of CentOS sprung up, and that there were some before. But uh, there are a number of appliances that have been moving to Rocky or Alma or even CentOS Stream in some cases. Um, Off the top of my head, I can't actually think of any. I do know that like Alma Linux is being used for Cisco PBX. Like their new VoIP routers are running Alma under the hood, and so there's weird things like that pop up. I think FortiGate might have been another one that was looking at Rocky and or Alma as a replacement for CentOS. So
45 drives.
45 Drives is another good example. They're one of our partners and sponsors and partners, and they have committed basically to running on or deploying for Rocky as well as Ubuntu in response to that. And I think there's been a large mix of responses, but generally I found that um, there's people that are either like just jumping from CentOS to Rocky or Alma or wherever, or they're just completely jumping ship and moving to an entirely different like Debian-based distribution, rather than sticking with EL or anything that's RPM-based. So the project itself, like especially since last year, and CentOS Stream 8 was recently EOL'd last month, and then there's also the CentOS 7 EOL that's happening at the end of this month. There definitely has been more usage of Rocky. We've seen that in various places, including the extra packages for enterprise Linux stats. We don't really keep good track of it or close track of it ourselves. We do have the statistics, but I know at one point, I think earlier this year, like January or so, we were hitting like 10 million requests a day on our Mirror Manager server. So yeah, it's probably only gone up from there, and we're pretty happy with the trajectory it's going for sure. But we just don't have enough real information to extract like who exactly is using Rocky, and nor do we really want to. Like we have the information, but we don't want to keep it. I don't want to be responsible for it.
Well, yeah. You because you would not ever want to know the exact number of head counts. You're not in that business. Yeah, and a lot of large places, they have their own central repo, and they might be redeploying anyway. So it's hard to get those counts. No, it's just always kind of interesting because we all know, back in the beginning there was, of Linux, there was a couple flavors, and everybody had one of those, and then all of a sudden there became 3,000 flavors of Linux, and we know, some of the names, but it's always kind of it's always, overview. Nice to see a distribution with the user count going up, right? It's very encouraging.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Boy, it's a quiet group tonight.
It's too hot. No one wants to speak. Well, thank you very much for having us back. Rocky TV loves to have everyone. Oh, there's another question.
Okay, you can come back anytime you want.
Thank you. Cow question regarding RPMs. Any notable advantages over D packages? There are some GPG signatures on like repo metadata is one of them in the ecosystem. One of the things I do like about D packages and Debian specifically, like, is the existing reproducibility efforts and ability for those packages to be reproduced at some level. There's currently work actually going on in Fedora for improving reproducibility. We recently introduced a package called add determinism, which is basically the Fedora version of Debian's strict non-determinism that runs after every build to remove stuff. In general, I think like it just comes down to preference, whether you like RPMs or D packages better. I've been unlucky enough to have to work with both, and they both kind of suck.
Well, we'll make you have to use snaps.
No, please. No snaps or flat packs.
No, please don't.
Yeah, we once had a guy sign up to talk about snaps. He was a Canonical employee. He used to come to our install fests. He explicitly said he wanted to come to one of our meetings and talk about snaps. We signed him up, and when it came time for the meeting, he didn't show up.
That's too bad.
Chris, I think that's a good suggestion.
I'm sure there's probably some good use case out there, but so far, like every snap package that Ubuntu has forced upon us has always made an application worse, at least for me.
Yeah, there's another user group I'm associated with. It's called the Natick FOSS, F-O-S-S, run by Dick and Jill Miller. And Dick and Jill were really, somebody's echoing. It's Ted. Anyway, Jill installed a snap version of her browser, and she wanted to share it with her, locally installed browser and couldn't. And they're really big Ubuntu users, or they were. And they're now on Linux Mint. But Dick actually runs, I think, so Miller Microsystems in Natick. And the problem that he had was that a native browser will put information in your home directory in a dot file or a dot directory, and Firefox did that nicely. But when she tried to run it from a snap, she couldn't make it connect to her home directory. And that made it very difficult, because one of the things they do is they share several different bootable versions of Ubuntu, and they have a common home directory, which is called user data. So they do that. And they're having trouble with snap packages being able to access that directory.
It's been a long time since I tried snaps, but I think that there's some mechanism in there to say explicitly, and I don't know if it's a GUI or editing a text file, but you can say that this program needs access to these folders under my home folder, and it'll let you in.
Mhm.
And in principle, I like the idea of having a system level tool that, like Android, puts applications in a sandbox. So
Yeah.
like I can download a random game from the internet and run it, and it doesn't need access to my files, so it doesn't get it. But with something like Snap, I think it's still like not quite ready for a mom and pop, and
Yep.
that's not a comment on the state of
Mhm.
Dick and Jill, but you have to invest the time to learn how to use it right, or perhaps use something else.
Yeah, I mean, Dick and Jill are pretty sophisticated people, um, as Bill can attest. But that really, that and a couple of the related things made it very difficult for them to use snaps. And they're not your average mom and pop.
My mom has two of the same icon on her Android home screen and doesn't know how to fix it. I'm going to have to do a phone call with screen sharing with her and help her out.
Yeah, we had the developer for SE Linux at one of our meetings, and he lost his hat, and he worked for Red Hat, and I knew him, and I finally, I told him, says, "Oh, you put your hat in your bag." He didn't.